It's the activated AF1, and we are the Futuritarians. And first and foremost, I'm going to say peace, power, and soul. This video is going to be on junk DNA and on where that came from. The junk DNA came from the Futuritarians. It came from AF1. When I was talking about junk DNA, wasn't nobody talking about that. You know, nobody was talking about junk DNA until I put it out there. And what happens is once you put intel on the internet, it becomes information. Intel becomes information. So then you have teachers that take your intel and they put it out there, but they don't give the source. That's why I did a video. Well, I didn't do a video. The brother Zarayas Nuclear, that's what it ended in you. He had did a video on the source. I was gonna do that video too, but now once I get to 137 videos, then this intel is gonna stop. In order for you to get the intel, you're gonna have to be over here. That's how you're gonna have to get the intel. You're gonna have to be over here. Simple as that. Because we the Futuritarians, man. There's nobody else coming with what's next. Whenever you're dealing with black magic, and you know, shout out to those brothers too. Like Black Magic, they got a YouTube channel, and it was talking about junk DNA. The junk DNA, they got that from the Futuritarians. They got that from AF1. So I always got to put that on the forefront, dealing with the fourth dimension. That's why your head is a forehead, because you can tap in. The next dimension is the fourth dimension. So in order for you to tap into the other dimensions, you have to tap into the four first. And the only way you can tap into the four first, coming with intel and not dealing with information with Google, Siri, and Alexa, you have to go through the Futuritarians. And this is proof, because Black Magic had put the video out, and I'm sitting there listening to the video. I'm like, okay. I'm like, yeah, that's deep. And I'm thinking to myself, like, well, y'all got that from me. You know, you got it from AF1, the Futuritarian, talking about junk DNA. But see, I'm going to break it down more thoroughly, because you have to go through us dealing with intel. That's just the way this planet's rolling, man. It's okay. When you're dealing with ones and zeros in a quantum computer, you're dealing with ones and zeros. When you're dealing with the golden people, what people call them the black race, the golden people, they always want to do everything without going to the source. See, that's the only way you can make this planet shift, is going to the source. So I'm going to give you an example. When you take the source's intel and you don't give the source credit, and then the source comes out, because you can't, when you're dealing with debating, because we don't debate, because why would we debate somebody and when we're receiving intel and y'all still on information? The debate, it won't go good for teachers unless they come over here humble. So that's why I did this video on the junk DNA, because I'm going to break it down to you thoroughly of what junk DNA is. And, you know, I'm not knocking them brothers for doing their thing or whatnot. The whole point I'm making is like, you tell them where the source is at, because the only way this planet's going to move forward is if the ones mess with the ones. And I was going to break down the movie The Matrix, and I'm like, I'm not breaking down The Matrix. There's a couple of brothers that was on the internet that broke down The Matrix, but I'm not breaking that down until I get the Patreon account up. So you're going to have to pay $10 a month to hear intel on there, because there's nobody else on the planet. There's nobody else on the planet that's bringing intel. Everybody's still talking about information. So when you're dealing with The Matrix, the movie The Matrix, when they call Neo the One, they call Neo the One for a reason. See, all this is galactical code systems. The numbers are not going to lie. The numbers is going to add up. They're going to get broke down. You could do it through quantum physics, algebra. It's still going to add up to a one. It's still going to be the same thing. So that's why when Neo, I'm going to give you an example. When Neo, at the first Matrix, when Neo finally, when he was in that hallway, and Neo finally tapped into us, he tapped into the one. What was the one? The quantum computer, ones and zeros. So when Neo tapped into the one, what happened? When those cyborgs, those artificial cyborgs started to see him, they started to see, remember Neo was shining? What was that? That was the sun. That was the soul. His soul was activated. His soul was activated. So now when you go into, because I ain't gonna break the Matrix down, because I broke that. I seen a brother, I don't know, y'all know this brother too. He got a beard and he has 2 wives, and he's always you know, well, I haven't seen him on the internet in a while, but when he was on the internet, he was always like breaking down stuff. He broke down the Matrix, and I'm like, okay, it was like, that was a pretty good job. But then it just activated me, and I just started breaking down even thoroughly. I went past that, because when you deal with activation, you go past what you hear. You don't stay stagnant. You go past it. So when you're dealing with Neo in the Matrix, it was all galactical code system dealing with Neo in the Matrix. And like I said, I'm not going to break that down on here. Break it down the Matrix movie. When I break the Matrix movie down, it's going to be thoroughly, and it's going to be a logical connection to your neurotransmitters in your mind where you can understand, overstand, megastand what I'm saying. So dealing with Neo, that's why they called him the One. Overriding the quantum physics. That's the only way. That's why when these teachers, it's so sad because when they use your intel and they make it seem like they did research on it, because they did do research to find it, but they don't want to tell you that it's intel. It's coming from a source. And that's the only way that this planet is going to shift. If the ones start messing with the ones. Because now the ones, we're back. That's why our number is 1111. That's why you see that number everywhere. You see a number 1111 everywhere right now. That's the ones. What's the two dots? The two dots in the middle of the 1111, the two dots is the portals from one side to the other dimensions. Because they're not finna let anybody go through a portal if they're not a one. And the only way you can get to a higher one is to mess with other ones and not associating yourself with zeros. That's the quantum physics. We moving past quantum physics. So yeah, break it down to junk DNA. The junk DNA, they call it junk because they want you to look at it as something that's not worth paying attention to. Something that's not worth paying attention to. Something that you just want to brush under the rug and be like, oh, that's just junk DNA. But no, with junk DNA, it is a missing strain for a reason, because everybody's not worthy of tapping into the upper dimensions. You have to be an activated soul to tap into the upper dimensions. How do you get activated? You have to go through us. You have to go through a one to get activated. There's nothing else on this planet matters about none when you're dealing with activation, because activation is the planet. Activation is the whole planet. So when these ones are out here teaching and they're doing it for the zeros, that's why when I said when I get to 137 videos, Intel's going to stop, and now it's going to be the Futuritarians receiving the Intel, and then we're going to move past the whole world. We're going to move past the whole world dealing with, I ain't even finna say that on the internet, because that's going into the cyberverse on money making stuff. We're gonna shoot past the whole world because this intel been coming. That's why I haven't dropped no videos, because I'm receiving intel. See, everybody's not worthy of tapping in. You know what I mean? Everybody's not worthy when you're dealing with. That's why I told people on this planet that everything is 9.5 billion years old. Your phone, cell phones, old. Helicopters, old. F-35s, old. Flying saucers, old. Unidentified flying objects, that's old. That's three-dimensional beings. The ones you see in spaceships are three-dimensional beings. They're highly advanced beings. They have access to portals, but in order for them to tap in, they have to be a one to go through the portal. So break it down to junk DNA. The junk DNA is strains that's been missing for a reason, because everybody's not going to be worthy to tap in. It's not going to be a lot. Look how many people run this planet. Go do research on how many people allegedly run this planet. I'm not sure, don't quote me on this, but I think it was like 256 people actually run the whole planet. It doesn't take a lot. It doesn't take a lot to run the planet, because the ones have to be with the ones. Where the ones are messing up at, because you got ones out here that's teaching, they on the research level. The reason why they're messing up is because they're not coming over here. They're not reaching out to the Futuritarians. They're not reaching out to AF1. So now everybody's going to be going through fiend mode. Because once I get to 137 videos, Intel is going to the Futuritarians. My 137 videos was a sacrifice. You can't move forward without a sacrifice. And I'm not talking about no hip hop and rappers, this and that. This is sacrifices that doesn't have to deal with that. There's different levels of sacrifice. This sacrifice was videos. I sacrificed 137 videos to put Intel out to let people know that this is real. So whenever you have a whole platform talking about junk DNA, they ain't even say it thoroughly on how it was. They left out activation. The reason why they did that is because they didn't want the source to come back to the source. The Futuritarians is the source. That's why they left out the word activation, because that junk DNA could be activated and you could tap into the higher dimensions. You could start tapping into anywhere from the 13th dimension down. But we're in the 13th dimension, so that's why we're pulling from the 14th dimension, because we're going into the fourth billion year. Just like up there, they're going into the 14th billion year. As above, so below. So I was like, when I was seeing their video and they was talking about junk DNA, I'm like, y'all left out the activation. I mean, you know, shout out to Black Magic, you know, but sometimes you just gotta say where the source is at, because the source is the only way the planet's gonna move forward. Y'all could do everything that y'all want to do, dealing with videos and trying to put the intel out as information, because it is information. After the intel leaves my voice, hits the cyberverse, it turns into intel. But then the intel is going to keep coming to only a selective few on the planet. And see, that's where they don't register that. They wonder why they can't tap in. They think that this is going to just be, it's just going to keep rolling out here like that. It's not. You're going to get left behind unless you're over here. Unless you're over here, you're going to get left behind. Because because when you're dealing with the upper dimensions, the 13th dimension, when you're dealing with I'm gonna use the term gods. When you're dealing with gods, man, in the 13th dimension, we could bring anybody back. Some people fell in the 8th dimension. Some people can't get past the 8th dimension. That's why the 8th dimension is a loop. If you look at the 8 is a loop process. When you do an 8, some people do 2 circles. It doesn't matter if you do 2 circles or if you connect it with the little snake and do a multi-circle, you're still being looped, going nowhere, stuck in what? The 8th dimension. Because a lot of people push the 5th dimension, and a lot of people push the 8th dimension. Why? Because they're not past that. They can't go past that. Everything is connected, as above, so below. That's why we push the 13th dimension, because when you add the 1 and the 3 equals the 4, the 4th dimension, and pulling from the 14th dimension, just like in the 3rd dimension, pulling from the 4th dimension. This is a galactical code system. Cannot be hidden. See, that's why when these teachers push the 4 and they push the 8, because they're stuck up there, and the only way they can get past that is to go through us. Because this intel been rolling in, I just ain't been putting videos out, because I'm like, people just, they get their minds blown. They don't want to acknowledge it. They don't want to acknowledge it. Well, actually, it's X-knowledge. X-knowledge it. You're Xing out knowledge and coming to the intel. They want to keep the knowledge. They want to keep the knowledge, and they want to keep the information. They don't want to X the knowledge out and move to the intel, because they're stuck up there in them upper dimensions. Yeah, some of them are in the 4th dimension, some of them are in the 5th dimension, some of them are in the 8th dimension. But none of them that's down here, that if they don't come over here, they're stuck in the 8th dimension. They're stuck in the 8th dimension. Now, when you put out the life jacket to get to the 9th dimension, up to the 13th dimension, a lot of them ain't going to take the life jacket. You know why? Because they're so content. They're still stuck in a 3-dimensional realm. They might say they not, but they still is, because they're not over here. Ain't nobody coming with nothing next but the Futuritarians. Everybody's relying on Google, Siri, and Alexa. And what's the golden race say? That's facts. That is. That's why they use the word information and not intel. But look at the news. The news understand that this evolution is popping. That's why they're saying intel now, not information. Why is that? Because we back. We came through that portal. Reincarnated Xerxes is back on the planet. Dealing with ones and zeros. Because there's ones out here, but they still want to be around zeros. The top ones, they're going to be over here. Because when you're dealing with intel and you're dealing with what's coming next, there is nothing else. That lets you know that we ain't on BS, because you got ones out here they're falling. They falling. That's why we the rising ones. We rising back up. They falling. You look at these teachers, man, they all going to slowly start falling, because they're still messing with the quantum physics. They're still messing with ones. Everything's going to 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, because those are the only ones that's in the future. That's why Neo said he was a 1. That's why I always stress that. And I got intel videos, but I'm not putting them out no more. I'm not putting them. Well, I'm gonna put I think I'm at like 136 videos. So when I get to 137, when you add that up, that's the 11. So then it's just going to be, it's going to be a repeat of what I'm doing now. And then when I get to Patreon, I'm going to put probably, I'm not going to put the hot intel out on Patreon, but I'm going to put enough intel out there to let y'all know that mentally ain't nobody messing with the Futuritarians. So that's why when I heard Black Magic podcast and I'm listening to Billy Carson, I'm like, well, you ain't never talked about junk DNA. And he left out activation. I ain't going to say he never talked about it, but I pushed it. And I'm sitting there like, okay, where'd you get this intel from? Right? So that's why I made the video, because I'm letting the whole world know. Like, yeah, like I said this in the last video. I said, yeah, they might have more money than us. They might have more followers than us. They might have more resources than us, but they ain't got no intel. And see, that's how we're going to go past them. And we're going to keep going past them unless they come over here. They don't come over here, man. Their future's finished. I don't care who. This is evolution. There's nothing nobody on this planet can do about it unless they come over here. Because it's going to keep rolling. We're going to keep receiving through the neural cortex. Just like my mentor broke down about the neural cortex. We're going to keep receiving it. While they still researching stuff on Google, Siri, and Alexa and going backwards, we're going to be getting stuff from the future. So yeah, breaking down, that's why in this picture right here, you got ones and zeros, the quantum computer. That's it. There is nothing else, man. Either you are one, that's why my name is AF1, at the top of everything. When you're dealing with mind power. I didn't get activated till 2 years ago. I'm 42 years old. I didn't get activated till I was 40. What's that? The fourth dimension. It's the 4 and then the 0. The fourth dimension. I didn't get activated till I was 40. I'm 42. This is a galactical code system. There's nothing nobody can do with that. The numbers will put everybody on their seats and put everybody in a time frame where they have to respect it and bow down mentally. I'm not talking about bow down and get on your knees. I'm talking about bow down mentally, because y'all ain't gonna come with nothing next. Your God is Google, Siri, and Alexa. That's who your God is right now. Artificial intelligence. You got organic intelligence and you have artificial intelligence. And dealing with the Futuritarians, once we get to the first 11, then you'll see a shift. Everybody talking about the planet shifting. Yeah, it's shifting, but why is it shifting? Who is it shifting for? Who's futuristic and who's not? Who relies on Google, Siri, and Alexa and who don't? That's the difference. That's how you're going to figure out in the future who's on top mentally and who's at middle mentally and who's at the bottom mentally. Because they're going to always rely on artificial intelligence. It's the activated AF1. We are the Futuritarians. I want to say peace, power, and soul. Shout out to the brother Zareyas out in Las Vegas, Zareyas Nuclear. The other brother Cosmos out in Cleveland. Yeah, because it's quantum T over quantity.